is Bryson Allen. And Allen weaving his way all the way down to the 22.
10-yard line, 5. Mayfield, Dancy, all around. Throwing as far as he can throw it. Jump ball coming. Crazy stuff. Not this time.
And you want to be a wide receiver. You're going to have to take a little bit of a hit like that as Brown got him in that shoulder. But watch. Oh, those are teeth.
Do we have a dentist on staff here?
All right, we are back with another episode of Around the Indoor Football World, presented to you by a couple different sponsors we'll get to a little bit later. If you're watching, make sure to hit that like button, comment your thoughts as we're going through these topics. We got a lot of good ones today, and make sure you share this with your friends. You know, if you got a lot of indoor football fans in your friends group, definitely make sure they're aware of this show. Very proud of what we've been able to build here, and we will definitely continue to bring you all the latest information as we go on. I am joined by two very special guests. TJ, you have definitely seen on here quite a few times at this point. He's become one of my most reliable co-hosts on Saturday mornings. And then you've seen CJ on this network quite a few times as well, although typically for the Carolina Cobras show, joining us in a little bit different capacity today. How you guys doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Looking forward to another great conversation about some big topics coming out of the indoor and arena football world. As you guys know, there's been a lot of news coming out recently. Sorry, my son's trying to get in some little bits and bobs here as well. He normally is not awake, but he decided he wanted to be a part of this episode as well. So first thing we're going to jump into is obviously, we've got a recent NAL player with us. So we're going to go ahead and start with the NAL. And the NAL league meetings just kicked off and have kind of started to begin wrapping up as we go into the weekend. They were all in Omaha, Nebraska for the most recent meetings. And there were some things that popped up out of the meetings that weren't necessarily announced, but, definitely caused a stir around the league. So I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on a photograph that had popped up, and let me get that pulled up for you guys. But the little slip, I guess you could say, that the NAL let loose with showing off the helmets that were at the event this past weekend. Let's go to CJ first. Were you surprised to see that picture and how it kind of revealed that there was a team on there that we had not seen before?
Yeah, I mean, as a player, as a guy who's been in the league, it was kind of interesting. Were they hinting at something? Were they, was it an error? You never know. But I thought it was pretty cool to have that picture. For those of you that haven't seen it, the helmet right between Corpus Christi and Wheeling, and the logo's just small enough where you can't really tell what it is, which once again, that could be a tease, could be something like that. But I thought it was pretty interesting to have that posted without, any sort of formal announcement prior to it being posted. But it's really good look for the league to have right now 10 or 9, potentially 10 if we find out who this helmet belongs to. Potentially 10 strong franchises in the league, regardless of what people on the outside may say. Talking to these teams and, hearing from people that played for these organizations, it seems like the NAL is trending in a very strong direction. And, with the addition of a potential 10th team, could only make it stronger. I'd love to see where that market's at, what their logo actually is, and, what they may go by. So.
Absolutely. Definitely piqued my curiosity. I mean, TCJ, we talked a lot off screen about this and trying to figure out exactly what that logo corresponded to and all of that. And then the same thing was going on in our network group chat as well. And we were all trying to figure out if that was, the potential Louisiana team that we've discussed on here before, if it was another market that we had not heard before. I had actually had, some people mentioned that there may be more than 10 teams at the meetings, and I never got that confirmed or anything like that. So I was kind of curious. Is this a team we haven't heard about yet? Is this another expansion team that could be coming that we haven't talked about? But honestly, the more I kind of dug into it, the more I realized that the overwhelming likelihood is that is the Louisiana team. TJ, what were your thoughts on this? I know you've spent some time in the NAL as well. What were your thoughts on how this kind of was presented to the world?
I think it was an awesome idea to leave breadcrumbs to build up excitement. It's like you said, the logo is just small enough where you can't make it out because the helmet being black. If it was blue or orange like the Omaha Beef, you might be able to make the logo out. So I think they purposely put that out there to have a mystery team. And they have been saying for weeks, if not months now, that the goal was to get at least 10 teams in, and that would be team number 10. So it does make sense, but they definitely built up some hype and excitement. So I can't wait to see what team it is and when they announce it.
Definitely agree on that front. I mean, this offseason for the NAL, I don't know how the casual fan views it in terms of like how closely they're paying attention to everything we're talking about today, because obviously the show is a little bit more for the fans that are really dedicated to the sports and kind of keeping up to date on every little crumb of information that comes out, such as something like this. Well, I personally think that the NAL is being very intelligent. I don't think that this was released by accident. The people who run this league are too intelligent for that. This was put out for a reason. They wanted us all talking about this. They wanted everybody to keep the NAL on the top, the forefront of their minds. Oh, look at this. The NAL is doing something big again. They've got these league meetings going on and stuff. And there was a comment in our Discord server that we have going on by Zach Kyleman. Shout out to Zach. If you've watched Arena Football at all, you know who Zach is. He was a big part of the Inside the Walls and, several other podcasts over the years. But he mentioned that in all of his years of covering the NAL, they have never emphasized the fact that they were at league meetings this much. And it's like, okay, why do you do that? Well, you want everybody looking. And then you release a picture like this, and it's like, okay, now you've got everybody looking. You're throwing out these breadcrumbs. Where does this lead now? So I definitely think this was done on purpose. And I definitely think this was to keep people like us talking, keep them in the news cycle, and to do so in a manner that makes sense. We're not releasing bad information here. We're giving you little crumbs, like, you guys said that, maybe, just maybe, we're going to be not only at 10 teams, but possibly above 10 teams, which, I mean, I don't think anybody who looked at the way the NAL ended last season, not knowing what was coming, of course. I mean, if you knew what was coming, obviously you had that information, but not knowing what was coming after the season, I don't think anybody saw us getting to this point. I mean, CJ, maybe you can speak on that a little bit. You were in the league this season. Did you ever think we would get to this point?
Before I touch on that, I do think that you're onto something there about just the overall marketing of this picture. I'm still wrapping my brain around it. But I think being in the league the last 2 years, so in 23, that was Jacksonville's last year, Orlando's last year, San Antonio, West Texas, all those teams left for other leagues for whatever reason. But then coming into 24, being the only original NAL franchise, it was different, and then, I look at everything like, what's the saying, with a 30,000 foot view. So, and what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to down anybody, whatever, but you know, when you looked at the NAL coming into 24 and you start seeing franchises that hadn't played games in 4 years, 5 years, for a variety of reasons, you know, some could be legitimate, some could just be whatever. Wasn't really a great start, you know, and then the addition of some of the teams from the CIF, obviously everyone knew Omaha, Sioux City were going to be strong additions. You know, they're two of the best storied, successful franchises in indoor football. You know, Omaha's won back-to-back championships, been undefeated, won 3 out of 4 or 5 years, whatever. Sioux City's been really good, you know, but when you add Topeka in there, everything I saw online was this team was struggling in the CIF financially, you know, from players, past employees, things like that. So you're like, all right, that's questionable. Then you add an expansion team, any expansion team, no matter who it is, no matter who runs it, whatever, expansion teams are tough because everything's a first. It's the first time that you have to pay that arena. It's the first time that you have to cut player and coach payroll. It's the first time that you have to, you know, pay sponsors. It's the first time. There's so many firsts that happen. And so when you're looking at it, you're like, all right, you have 4 franchises out of the, I think we're at 8 maybe, that were either first year or hadn't played in multiple years or struggled a little bit previously. So it's like, all right, that's not a great look. And then you had Idaho coming in from the AWFC. Idaho, well-ran organization, a lot of respect for Coach Reynolds and what he's done out there. They were super nice to us when we were up there. I mean, it was a good time, good environment, everything. But once again, coming from what many people have viewed as a lower league, you know, a team that they were playing everyone in their little pocket of the country. They didn't have to worry about traveling to Carolina or traveling to Omaha, so that's added expenses. So when the season started going, and then those teams, you know, North Texas and Topeka fold before the season starts. So now, boom, we're down to 6 teams, I think. Then we get a quarter of the way, halfway through the season, Oklahoma's gone. They folded the week that we were supposed to travel out there to play. Like we're talking in our group chat, like, are we going? What are we doing? Like, we're hearing mixed reviews. You know, they were fine to go on the road, but they couldn't host home games for whatever reason. So we're like, well, we're supposed to go there. Are we going to play? And then boom, they're gone. So then all of a sudden you're down to 5 teams. And it's like, you know, there's stuff out and about, you know, about certain organizations. So, you know, you're like, are we going to make it through the season as a league? So then the season wraps up everything. And, you know, my first thought was, if we don't expand and bring in, like, I don't want to say real teams, but real teams that have, you know, solidified owners, a following, people that understand the game, it's going to be tough to continue to grow the league. You know, because at the end of the day, I don't think the NAL has to compete with the IFL. I hate seeing that. Well, it's not the IFL. They don't have a brand partnership. The IFL has a great business model. You know, Mr. Tron has that thing running like a well-oiled machine. But I guarantee you there's still stuff going on behind the scenes that doesn't get out. And they've also been doing it for 16, 17 years as a league. They had their rough patches in the first 6, 7 years. You know, we were talking off screen. I can't remember. I don't want to miscredit anybody, but someone had posted it a while back whenever some of the stuff in the NAL started going down about how they had, if you looked team for team over the first 7 years, the IFL had more folded franchises than the NAL. That's not anything to brag about, but it shows that both leagues have had to have struggles to get where they're going. You know, you don't have the IFL where it's at if you don't have some of those years where a Louisville Extreme has to come in and fold or things like that. I think now the NAL is in a better place than it's ever been because I think the commissioner and the people in charge making the decisions are a lot more intent on making sure the NAL lasts. It's not just taking hey, I want to start a team. Okay, cool. Do you have an arena? Yeah, something like that. Well, do you have this? Yeah, something like that. Now everyone has to make sure that they're doing right to make sure that they can own a team and can sustain a team through a season because it costs a lot of money. I don't know if you guys know him, but I remember a few years back, the former owner of the West Virginia Rough Riders, Greg Fenorio, had posted on Facebook. Someone said something about how much does it cost to run at the time, he was an AAL owner. So budget significantly lower than an NAL IFL franchise. Travel wasn't as bad. But like, I'm not going to put out there the numbers, but I mean, it's more than what the common fan thinks it costs to run a team. I mean, that arena wants its money every week. You're not playing there for free. You got to pay, some sponsor trades or they give you something, but sometimes it's you give them something. Arena football as a whole lives off ticket sales. And those ticket sales help offset the cost of paying players and coaches. And now with players, so many talented players in the indoor arena game, because of the success that's came from playing in these leagues and now going on to the UFL, CFL, things like that. Some players want to get compensated a little bit more. So now as an owner, can you afford that? So I think the NAL adding these teams, adding strong teams like, Sam, you and I talked about it, off screen, but every team in our league now has played games in the last 365 days. There's nobody coming into this league. Now, obviously, if there's an expansion team or something like that pops up, so be it. But everybody in our league has made it through a season. Whether it be our league, another league, whatever. So, obviously, ownerships know a little bit about what's going on. Obviously, you can never plan for everything. What's going to happen the first time that I'll just use one of the new teams. Columbus has to end up traveling to Idaho for a cross-division game or something. Like, those are added expenses. So, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, the NAL gets an even number of teams or as even as possible and try to two-division it like the IFL to eliminate a lot of the travel costs. Those are the things that I've been told by different people is the goal. But, Sam, like you and I have said, how many more East Coast teams are there available without just adding 2 or 3 expansion teams and then praying that they make it through the season?
No, definitely great points, and especially on the expansion teams. Obviously, that was one thing that it seemed like the NAL kind of shied away.
Well, I say, TJ, are we froze or is he just froze?
I think it's just him. But to add to your
I'm just being myself, cool as can be. When I'm being myself, you wish you were me. It's so easy. Get out your own way. It's just so easy.
Sorry about that. Had some momentary internet issues for some reason, just right in the middle of my sentence there. Nice and convenient.
I had to move a little bit to make sure it wasn't me. I was like, "Yep, I'm still moving. I'm good."
I honestly thought it was you at first, and then all of a sudden, all 3 screens went black, and I look up, and I have no service. So I was like, "Okay, that's a problem. I need to figure that out right quick." So, Honestly, I think that's one thing that the NAL has done very well. It's not every day that you can just go out and grab established teams and bring them into your league. And yet here the NAL is doing it with 4 different teams already that we know of. And I would imagine that, we can kind of shift into this conversation a little bit now. The Amarillo is probably the next team on that list. As we all saw, Amarillo changed their branding literally yesterday, and it's honestly a pretty cool logo. I think that's awesome, and that also plays into past teams with the Amarillo Dusters existing once before. But it just seems like they've gone out and been able to do what most leagues cannot, and that's attract teams that are already established, like you said, teams that have played games within the last year. So, TJ, were you surprised to see how many different established teams did kind of come out of the woodwork and join the NAL this season? TJ, sorry.
You say me or TJ? I'm sorry.
TJ. Oh, shit. TJ.
Oh, sorry, you broke up. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Yeah, my fault.
I'm back.
Sorry about that. So yeah, basically my thought was like, were you surprised to see how many established franchises came out of basically nowhere to join the NAL?
Yes and no. Yes, because honestly, that hasn't been their track record. But to follow that, that's exactly why you're seeing this solid of a vetting process and everything. In recent years, we just touched upon it this past season. A lot of teams folded mid-season. A few years ago, the whole Albany debacle. So they've, kind of going back to the growing pains, they've risen above it, and now they're really vetting the teams and making sure they bring in solid franchises. I think they're in the best spot that they've probably ever been in as a league right now. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they do next season and even further growth, because I feel like they're starting to hit that time frame, like we said about the IFL, where it was kind of touch and go, a little bumpy early on, but once they hit their stride, man, they were just off to the races. I think we're starting to see that same storyline develop with the NAL if they can keep everything on par with how they've been doing this offseason so far.
Completely agree. And I like that CJ touched on the fact that the IFL had so many struggles early on. We're not sitting here trying to poke fun at the IFL by any stretch, but it took them time to figure it out. And that's what we're trying to intimate about all these other leagues. The NAL has been literally around for half the time the IFL has, and they've grown into a 10-team league with nothing but established teams and maybe this one expansion team in Louisiana. That's impressive. If you look from the outside looking in, it is not every day that you see this happen, especially after what they've been through the past couple seasons. That Albany situation, that was so ugly for anybody who was involved. And there's a reason why the ownership group that originally owned the Empire basically just threw up their hands and walked away. Because once Antonio Brown got involved with that thing, it went downhill, and it went downhill fast. And it was, realistically not because of the other owners there, because you see them turn around and start the Albany Firebirds and have nothing but success. So it's kind of interesting to see how everything's gone down over the past couple seasons. But, I think that we might have seen a different outcome last year, if not for the existence of the AIF. If last year you see the AIF teams come over to the NAL to begin with, maybe you get the issues that we saw with some of the teams, the Cedar Rapids, the Albany River Gators, and stuff like that never ended up being a part of the league truly. It maybe that 2024 season looks a lot better on paper when you start and finish with more than 5 teams in both leagues, for that matter. So, I definitely think that's something to think about and look back on and kind of realize that there were some outside factors with everything that was going on here. But before we move on to the IFL, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this branding. Obviously, we all know that the Amarillo Dusters is a team that was around for many years. They've played in virtually every league. I think they've been in the IFL, the AF2, and I think the AAL2 at one point. TJ, what are your thoughts on this branding?
I like it. It, like you just said, it's a throwback. I remember them playing for a couple years, I believe, in the AF2, and it the fact that they rebranded during the meetings definitely shows that they're looking to make some good, solid moves. And I look forward to seeing what they have to bring.
Agreed. And CJ, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I honestly hadn't followed Amarillo very closely before. Then when they brought the team back, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I had heard of them. Knew some people that were out there back when they were in the CIF maybe before they shut down right before COVID, and then just had just known about them but never followed them real close. So I think the change is needed. I think when you carry a team into multiple leagues using the same name, either changing venues or changing this or changing that, it can kind of get played out a little bit. So I think it's a real good rebrand, kind of a fresh start for the organization, allow them to, kind of put that footing back and, back out there. And, we'll see how it plays out. I wonder if they have, a lot of fans before that were like, oh, I miss the Dusters, bring the Dusters back. So that'd be cool to kind of tap into that potential market with those fans. So I just want to see, continue to hear positive things about them, and wherever they end up next year, I hope that they are solid and a good addition to whatever league that they decide to join or get accepted to.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part about that. And I'll read the press release real quick here. But the Amarillo Venom, a beloved name in the arena football community, is proud to announce its rebranding to the Amarillo Dusters. This exciting transformation brings back the nostalgic spirit of the team's original name, reigniting the passion of the fans in the community. Reflecting on the significant change, Robert Reyna, owner of the Amarillo Dusters, shares his enthusiasm, saying, "I cannot wait to bring a new scene and energy to Amarillo. We have a million things we will be providing for the city and an enormous amount of support for this new venture as a new team and environment." The Amarillo Dusters are also thrilled to announce their switch to a new league, promising thrilling new matchups and a revitalized game day experience. This announcement marks the beginning of a new chapter for the team, with a formal reveal scheduled for next week. I'm curious to see if that formal reveal next week actually announces the league they're going to, because you'll notice that in the press release that I just read, it does not say which new league they're going to. They just say they're going to a new league. So that's definitely something that's going to pique my curiosity. But I believe the timing of that brand change kind of lends itself towards them being another NAL team. And then if that's the case, by my math, that's team number 11. So then that opens the question: is there a 12th team that we see come out of the woodwork? So still more questions to come for the NAL, and I think we're probably going to get some announcements this upcoming week, given that we just finished the NAL owners meetings. That's not inside information. That's just my guess, given that they just finished those meetings. It's typically how it works anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how everything goes for the league, for Amarillo, and see exactly how everything falls for them. Because honestly, it's been a really interesting time to keep track of everything going on.
Yeah, I mean, if they happen to get announced before mystery helmet team gets announced, then you're sitting at 10 teams, and by my math and by my looking at Wikipedia on the map of the NAL, you would have two divisions of 5 with, for the most part, the Western Division would have solid, you'd have Colorado, Idaho, Omaha, Sioux City, and I don't know which, I think Amarillo's on the western part of Texas. So that would be one league, and then you would have Corpus Christi, Carolina, Columbus, Wheeling, and Harrisburg on your eastern side. So it does definitely help. You could definitely build a little rivalry between Amarillo and Corpus Christi if that does end up happening. But like you said, Sam, that definitely wasn't an orange Dusters helmet on that table. So, looks like we could potentially have 11 teams. So who would be the 12th team? Does a team that used to play years back come back? Does a AFL team leave? Does something like that happen? Does another AIF team join? It'd be interesting to see what happens, because ideally for the NAL, like you and I were talking about before, the best situation for the NAL is to have all their teams announced at least by the end of August, because now you're giving these fan bases, these organizations 6 months or so to kind of really put everything in place for the newer teams. And then also it gives you a chance to, when you go into the schedule making, you can release your schedule a little bit earlier. You don't have to hold it until the end of October or November or whatever, because you're adding this team a week before the schedule starts. So I think that could be a positive for the league, is, if you can try to get your schedule done, and, that way fans can plan travel, players can, by then or have signed places, they can start figuring out, okay, I need to take off work. If I work this day, do this, do that. So it'll just be beneficial for all those involved.
The reason you watch this show is because we get news like this while we're live. So an anonymous, very reliable source within the NAL just contacted me to tell me that at least 14 teams, potentially 14 teams that could be approved for 2025 are at those league meetings. 14.
Wow.
So, wow. Man, if you're a part of the National Arena League, you should definitely be patting yourself on the back. I mean, I've said this multiple times on the show. It's been amazing to watch this growth of the league, and I was not expecting to get that information. I figured maybe 12, maybe 12, but man, to hear 14 teams could have been there.
That's definitely big news for the NAL. But I can't remember who said it last week when you guys were talking about what will I guess make the AFL survive. Same thought process though. I was driving back from Massachusetts. I was stuck in New York traffic, so I listened to the pod. But you also don't want to grow too fast. I listened to Mr. Tryon talk about the IFL and how he has a vision. He caps, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, he said 24 teams was the max he would do. He doesn't want to grow. So my only concern for the NAL is don't overdo it. If you have 10 or even 12 stable franchises, do that first. Don't come out with 14, 16, 8, whatever number they end up landing on, and then all of a sudden you're back down to that 10 or 12 anyway. So, slow growth is better than no growth. So, it's good. It's optimistic. If it works, it works. I'd love it. Definitely, we'll do some good things, but then you start having to ask the question, well, if you add more teams, you have to have more games. Ideally,
Agreed.
The model last year for the NAL was a 10-game season because they wanted to be done before the 4th. So, they want to be done before the 4th, 10 games works. If you have 14 teams, how do you even out division play? You can't play everybody twice, because now you're at 14 games. So now you're going. So it could make scheduling a little dicey once you start getting up to those higher number teams.
Absolutely. And they go on to say that the process for vetoing teams has become a lot more stringent. There's been ability for them to now kind of make sure that teams are going to last all season long, including and up to having to pay in advance some of their league dues to make sure that they are, in fact, a very serious team. So love to hear that by the NAL. I think that's incredibly important for them. So with all that being said, it looks like TJ has to get out of here. Really appreciate your time today, TJ. Definitely will have to get your thoughts on that Fisher Freight coaching situation on next episode. So maybe we'll save that topic until next week.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me again, as always. And keep watching the playoffs today. It's a lot of good matchups.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate you coming on, and have a great rest of your day, sir. We'll catch you later.
I thank you guys too. See you later, CJ.
See you.
We're going to play a quick commercial, and then we'll come back with some IFL news, and we'll welcome on Cody from inside the alley, in the alley, not inside the alley. I apologize. With that in mind, definitely check out our sponsor, which is D's Place. Shout out to them.
Follow your passion first. First. It's the most fun thing in the world. You get up in the morning excited about what you're doing. And you got to be really honest with yourself about it. And you got to sit there and ask yourself, okay, what am I truly passionate about? What do I enjoy doing?
All right. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, we are joined by Cody in the alley. Cody, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Looking forward to talking some more great IFL news. A lot has come out over the past couple of weeks, and we've talked a lot about what they've been able to do this offseason. And it's a situation where I think or not offseason, during the season. It's a situation where a lot of people, I think, were caught off guard by the fact that, they announced a broadcast partner just before the playoffs. They announced this expanded simple bet situation. So, you're our IFL expert. I'm curious to hear your opinions on, let's go with the stadium situation first.
Sure. For the stadium situation, I don't know how far they're going to expand it. Right now, they're just doing it for 6 playoff games. If you watch Todd Tryon's little clip from Inside the IFL on the IFL YouTube page, he says that they're getting paid for it. They're not paying for the rights or anything for it. So, more getting paid is better than paying. So we'll see if that kind of expands further. We do know that they had a deal with Stadium just a few years ago, I think in 2021 or something like that, where they would broadcast a game of the week when it was actually over the air on a TV channel. This is just streaming on their YouTube channel. So does it really make an impact? Stadium has, I believe, 62,000 subscribers on their YouTube page. Excuse me. Well, the Indoor Football League's YouTube channel only has about 40,000. I know we're painting with a broad brush here, but that's an extra 20,000 subscribers that have an opportunity to see your stuff just on YouTube compared to on the actual Indoor Football YouTube channel as well. So doing that, any other streaming service like a Roku, Amazon, Fire TV, things like that, you're able to reach a broader audience in that regard. So I think it does help. It's a nice little litmus test, nice little test here just for the playoffs to see, does it truly make a difference? Are we really going to put a game of the week on Stadium in the following years, or is this just kind of a one and done thing? We're going to get paid for these 6 playoff games and then have our game on CBS Sports Network for the championship. So I'm curious to see how it progresses from here.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting announcement. When they first announced it, they said exclusive platform, and there was some confusion because of the way the article was worded. And it kind of mentioned in there that you would still be able to catch the games on YouTube. What I didn't realize is that they meant the Stadium YouTube channel, not the Indoor Football League channel. So I'm curious what we start to hear about, over the next week or so in terms of the IFL fans. What do they think about that? So if you're watching this show right now and you're a huge IFL fan, I want to hear your thoughts on the move for the playoffs to go to not only Stadium, but then the championship game to be on CBS Sports. Is this a good thing in your eyes? Does it really change your view on the league? It's kind of an interesting subject because I remember a lot of complaints that they wouldn't be able to watch the IFL championship game on YouTube. So I'm curious to see how people feel about this. CJ, I know you've obviously been keeping track of all this. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's anytime you, like Cody said, anytime you can get paid for something, you don't have to pay for it. That's definitely a good thing. So that's a positive. My first thoughts are, what happens to your broadcast? So what do I mean by that? If I'm, let's say, the Green Bay Blizzard, big win for them last night. Congratulations to Coach Roberson and his staff and his organization. But they have people that do their game on YouTube every week, every home game. So now if their game's on Stadium, does Stadium now have to provide broadcasters? Do they now do the little graphic at the bottom that keeps the score? Are they in charge of the camera angles, or are you going to have both? At these bigger venues with these teams that may, I think of the Rattlers, who play in an arena that NBA teams have played in, WNBA teams, whatever. Will they have two different broadcasts? At some point, will they have a broadcast for the Rattlers, or will they have a broadcast for Stadium if it became a full-time thing, or is it just Stadium? So now how do those logistics work? And then, I think that the next part of it too is, what benefit do you gain, from it? Cody said extra 20,000 subscribers is big, because maybe it's in your city and you didn't know about it, or you hadn't went, and now all of a sudden you're like, wow, I see him on TV. Now I'll go to a game. There's a lot of added benefit, but what's the long-term goal for any sort of TV deal, any sort of broadcast deal, things like that? I know, listen to the NAL commissioner talk about it. That's there's a lot of things that go into that. You don't want to jump at it because it looks nice. And I think the IFL is doing a great job of saying, well, let's give it a trial run here during the playoffs. And if it goes well, we can see what happens after that.
Absolutely. And we got a couple of players chiming in here as well. But Cameron McPherson of Western Address on Substack. For balanced scheduling models, 16 is ideal, 12 is fine, 14 is a little awkward. He is not wrong. 14, that fits into 17 divisions. That's an odd number. That gets a little difficult there, but always able to figure that out. Maybe you add in a bye week, and that kind of solves the whole situation there. Jared Keuchel, an offensive lineman that's kind of been around the block here a couple years. Yes, this needs to happen. Being a player that has been on teams that have fallen apart, it's sad. He's talking about the vetting process of the NAL. Yeah, I mean, from a player's perspective, you have to love to hear this from the NAL. And realistically, I mean, no. I don't mean anything negative when I say this about the AIF, but when you eliminate the teams that were in the AIF that just couldn't quite keep up to the standard of the AIF, and same thing with the NAL, and you come together with those two leagues, suddenly you create an entity that is a lot stronger, a lot more stable. And I think that's going to be a good thing for players. And it's also going to attract more players, because now this is all of a sudden the biggest version of the NAL we've ever seen. And I think that's a huge thing. Shout out to D's Place. They have been great partners for us. And then Marcus Brooks, quarterback for the Columbus Lions, tuning in. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate this. If you're watching, do us a solid. Hit that little share button. Share it with all the fans of indoor football in your life. Although this is not the only news coming out of the IFL right before the playoffs. SimpleBet has announced the expanded IFL betting options. Cody, we're going to go to you on this. I know you're an avid IFL bettor. I just recently bet for the first time, so I'm curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, they've been with SimpleBet for, I think, as long as they've started in with the betting process. That was last year, 2 years ago, or something like that, where they really started to put their hand into the betting. And I know Todd Tryon has said multiple times that they want to get it further in depth. So what I use personally is DraftKings. No shout out, could be a sponsor, but no. What they do is it's really just money line, spread, over, under. And what Tryon wants to do is he wants it to be like every single play or every drive, or what is the outcome of this drive? Is it going to be a touchdown? Is it going to be a field goal? Things like that, which you do get in other games. Like I think you have it in the CFL, you have it in the NFL, of like what's going to happen on the third drive of the game, or things like that. And I think that's the point where he wants to get to. And I think this is what they're trying to get at with these expanded betting options. So in other words, it's not just betting your live spread or betting your over under or your live total or anything like that. So they're really trying to get further in depth with the betting process. I think they're expanding it with Simple Bet. I don't personally use Simple Bet. I kind of just stay with DraftKings. I know they're on ESPN Bet and maybe one other thing. It could be better or something like that. So I think they're really trying to really get further into the betting process here. I don't know how much money they make, if they make any money off of it, what percentage goes to them or things like that. But yeah, I think it really does benefit. It kind of keeps people's eyes on the game. I know not just indoor football league, but obviously other sports that people bet on. It kind of keeps you really in tune to the game. And if you're really sweating that over under of 86.5 and it's, 44 to 43, you're sweating it out because you just got that over by 1 point or half a point. So, yeah, I think it helps them out in the long run.
I agree. I mean, even if they're not making money off of it, I think it draws in a crowd that maybe would not have necessarily been watching the league originally. That gives them an outside reason why you want to pay attention to IFL. Hey, I can make some money on this. Nobody's really betting on it quite yet. So, I jumped in it last night for the first time just because I haven't experienced it and I wanted to try it. Obviously, I'm not betting a lot of money, but I did end up losing. I bet on Quad City. So, way to go, Steamers. No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to my guy, Omar. I'm sure that was a heartbreaking loss. They were in it till the very end, and unfortunately, it just didn't fly their way. But CJ, you're in the NAL, or you were in the NAL the most recently. From your perspective, you see this partnership with the IFL. How do you see this affecting indoor football in general as a whole?
Well, obviously from a player perspective, getting more eyes on the sport is never a problem. It's the same thing that they talk about with all the bigger leagues, all these things coming out. And I know trying to compare indoor football to, NFL, NBA is ridiculous, but it could happen. The one thing that gets concerning whenever you start expanding the betting process, and start, okay, I'm going to say, Cody's going to have 8 catches for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. Well, what if it starts affecting the game? What if, and I don't think it would ever happen because our leagues are strong and they have great leadership. But what happens if some guy that's making, league minimum is like, well, I can bet my paycheck on me to go and hit all my overs on this and cash out for $1,000. You want to be very careful, and I don't know if the IFL has a gambling stuff in their contracts for players because it could get a little dicey. But I know for me personally, I avoid betting on IFL games and things like that just because by the chance that I'm in the IFL, I don't want someone coming back to me and saying, oh, so last year you bet against, insert team name to lose this game, and then I'm playing for that team. So, I think it's a great thing for the league. I think it's really good for the fans and the supporters of the league, but I do think that they need to make sure that they're strict with players because the last thing you want to see is the integrity of the game be affected, over a few dollars, playing on a platform.
Agreed. And that is definitely something that they addressed, I think, right out the box. I don't remember the exact statement, but I believe there's a very hefty suspension if a player is ever found betting on themselves or betting on their team. Shout out to Daniel Villapando, our host for the Spring Showcase, our LFA show. He's tuning in. He says, love the hat. He's a fellow Eagles fan, so always love to see that. Definitely thank you for tuning in, Daniel. We appreciate it. As you can see, I gained a little co-host here. He's very active this morning and does not want to play with his trucks over there in the background at the moment. So if he adds in some 2 cents, I apologize. But moving on to the next subject at hand, obviously last night we saw the first IFL playoff game on Stadium. I'm curious overall, what were your guys' opinions if you watched the game, CJ? on the quality of the broadcast and ultimately the outcome of the game. So we'll go to CJ first.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to catch the game last night. I was doing some things with the wife and the dogs, but saw the recaps and everything. And like I said, congratulations to Coach Roberson and hit the Green Bay Blizzard organization for getting a huge win. I mean, I think I saw something. This was the first year they were in the playoffs since 2019, maybe. And I don't know if they won a playoff game then or what. So, it'd been a drought for that organization. So to see them go out there, one of the hardest thing in sports is to be the top team and continue your success in the playoffs. So for them to have a very, very, very good year, then go out there and win a big playoff game and, move on to the next round is huge for them. And, Coach Roberson's got those guys buzzing around offensively. They're explosive. Defensively, I mean, I've called a couple of their games this year. I don't know if I've seen a defense fly around, as fast as they were that game. So it'll be interesting to see, how this week plays out or how today plays out with, Frisco and Mass. And, because you could get a 1 versus 2 matchup to go to the IFL championship. So, it'll be interesting to see who Green Bay has. And, good thing is it's at the Resch Center. So, they get to get another home game and another chance to play in front of those fans and, potentially punch their ticket to a championship game, which I know would be a first for them in a long time. So, I'm cheering on Coach Roberson and his guys and hope that they, shock some people and make something happen.
Absolutely. And shout out to Coach Roberson. I know that there may still be a little animosity between him and our platform. I did write an article a couple years ago saying Green Bay should fire him, so I understand why he's not my biggest fan. But Green Bay showed a tremendous faith in his coaching ability and his way of running the team, and they're being rewarded for it. So just goes to show that us writers are not always the more intelligent people here. I obviously am being proven wrong in this situation, and kudos to him because, honestly, it's been a lot of losing in Green Bay over the past couple of years, and he's found a way to turn that around, and I think that's huge. But Cody, I wanted to get your opinion on this game. I mean, I know we kind of talked about it off screen, but did you anticipate Green Bay winning this game?
Yeah, I anticipated them winning it. I didn't think it was going to be a blowout by any means. I did take the -9.5, talking about betting, and they won by 11, so sorry about that. But they were just the better team. When you watched the game last night, it was pretty defensive. No score in the first quarter. They only held Quad City to 3 points in the first half, so the defense was rocking and rolling. And then the offense kind of came on late there. They didn't score a lot of points. I thought they'd score up into the 40s. They only scored 34. So my issue going into next week is, depending on who you play, whether it's Massachusetts or Frisco, you got to be able to get that ball in the end zone. You got to be able to, make your field goals and stuff like that. Because we know Frisco can score in a clip. They've scored the most points in a single game with 81. Massachusetts is no slouch. They've played each other kind of close throughout the season as well between Green Bay and the Pirates. So the game was fun. It was a nice little defensive battle kind of there in the first half. Quad City made it 20-17 at one point, and all they really needed to do was get a stop, and they just couldn't do it. Green Bay ended up kind of scoring 14 unanswered there after that and kind of held on for the victory. Kudos to that defense because that's kind of what's carrying them right now. Sean Steele and Riverius Rivers with interceptions. They were to Quad City's credit, they've been kind of running a 2-quarterback tandem practically all season just based on injuries and stuff. And last night was no different. So I think you got to figure out that quarterback position. They ran it almost 100 yards on that defense, which is kind of Green Bay's weakness, excuse me. So they were able to kind of get their game plan to work, but Green Bay was just the better team. So we'll see what goes on in the next week's game because we'll see what happens tonight between Massachusetts and Frisco. We'll see if one team matches up better than the other.
Agreed. It was kind of interesting to watch this game progress, as one of our other network co-hosts mentioned. It was an NFL score in an IFL game, which is not very common. And honestly, it was kind of surprising to see how important the kicking game was to this game. Ultimately there was, I think, 4 total missed field goals, and it really kind of changed the trajectory of what was going on for Quad City at one point. If you don't have those interceptions, maybe this game ends completely different. But ultimately, turnovers by that defense are what ended up spelling the end of this game for Quad City. That late interception by Green Bay shut down any possibility of a comeback. And, to their credit, I want to shout out Quad City's coaching staff, because they kept their guys playing till the very last second, even knowing at that time they were down by 17 points. So I think that's a credit to the coaching staff. That's a credit to the pride from those players on that roster. And I think that's always a nice thing to see from a fan's perspective, because you want that team to be competitive up until the last second. And they were. They played up until the clock read zeros. They scored a touchdown right there at the end, even though it didn't matter. And they knew they were still going to lose. It just kudos to that coaching staff and everybody in that team. I think, it's going to be many, many more years of Quad City being a successful franchise and ultimately being a playoff contender. Although I do think they need to figure out that quarterback position going forward. So whether you run with Erickson or Irwin, or you bring in somebody else entirely, they did overcome, what was a big transition this season from EJ Hilliard to new quarterbacks. And for them to make the playoffs, I think they did all right. I don't think that's super common when you change out a quarterback that's been there for so many years. Any final thoughts on these couple topics before we move on to the expansive franchises in the Arena League?
Yeah, I think the last little bit I just want to touch on is, the both leagues are doing a great job of presenting good products for fans, and I think that people just need to understand that they don't have to compete against each other. I think the IFL can be the IFL. I know the NAL has moved towards indoor rules and things like that, but they can still be 2 separate entities. They don't have to merge and be a conglomerate. The last thing that needs to happen is indoor arena football being monopolized. It's good that we have different leagues, because by my count right now, there's like 32 or 33 active indoor or arena football teams. So that's opportunities for guys coming out of college, to get tape to try to move on. And that at the end of the day is what this is about. I use the UFL, for example. They merged and became a very good league. But there were, I believe, 6 to 8 teams in the USFL and 6 to 8 teams in the XFL. And then all of a sudden there was only 8 teams. So you lost
8 teams.
8 teams. So that's 8 different teams with opportunities for guys to come play, and coaches to coach, and fans to support their team, and sponsors to make money. You just lose out on all that stuff. So, if you had a giant merger, does every team make the cut? Probably.
That's a great point.
Because then you're going to have you can't have the same standard for, once again, I use them because the Arizona Rattlers have an amazing broadcast. You can't use the same standard for them as you would an expansion team in Louisiana that might be playing in a small venue and has a local production. And so how do you justify that? So then you have to start telling teams, either you fork up the money to do this or you can't be here. And I don't think that's good for the game. The game should continue to grow and give everyone involved opportunities: owners, GMs, coaches, players, sponsors, venues, to make money or do what they love to do. And I think that can be what helps both these leagues continue to grow and trend and stay around for a long time.
Agreed.
And by not rushing, you avoid, and I hate to knock them, but the biggest league that there was in this game failed 2 times before. And you guys were talking about it last week. Why did they fail? You're putting too much money out and not enough money coming in. You know, now with everything going to streaming platforms and you can watch all the games on YouTube, you have to really make sure that you make the community feel involved to get people there, to get tickets, to sell, so you can pay off bills with that stuff and not have to dive as much into your individual pockets as an owner. So that's my soapbox for it as a guy that I see it all the time about we should do this, we should do that. A lot of people seem to have the answers, but until you have been in the world or you're surrounded by the world or until you're inside the walls, no pun intended, you know, you don't know, you know. So I want everyone to continue to support. Hope there's a continued expansion amongst both leagues and, you know, continued growth in positive ways. And, you know, who knows, maybe at one point we can get to a situation, since we're playing the same rules, we could do, you know, an exhibition game of the IFL champion versus the NAL champion. You know, that'd be a cool little, you know, maybe that's broadcasted on TV, something like that. You know, there's things you could do to make it a little interesting like that, you know, just to give the fans a little bit what they want. But all in all, I don't think we need to have a 34-team league and, you know, having Carolina travel to Arizona and then have to go to San Diego, turn around and go down to Jacksonville, so on and so forth. But
No, you have great points on that. And honestly, to steal a saying from somebody, I don't know exactly who said it, but there's levels to this. You know, at the end of the day, there are different ownership groups that can afford different amounts. You know, not everybody can afford what the IFL requires for you to join and be stable in their eyes. And that's fine. You know, that's why there's the NAL. That's why there was the AIF. That's why there was why there is the AFL. And, you know, each of those leagues presents different opportunities for ownership, players, etc. So that is part of what makes indoor football so good. You know, if you like a certain rule set, there's a league for you, you know. And honestly, I think, you know, the AAL too, we don't talk about it much on this channel because it's more of a developmental league. But I think they've kind of angled themselves to be the developmental league for franchises now, you know, with Wheeling coming out of there. And I think they won't be the last franchise to jump into the AAL to grow their fan base, get established, play games, and then elevate to the next level. You know, part of that reason is because, you know, the AL2 does not require their teams to pay players. Some of those teams are not paid, so they're semi-pro. That reduces a lot of cost. It allows you to build that fan base. It allows you to get that arena, you know, sustain everything for a year or two and grow into something bigger. Cody, any final thoughts on any of these IFL topics or anything else that you want to touch on before we move on? All righty. Well, quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with a reveal video of the EAU Claire team, which seems pretty awesome. Shout out to Estime for Fitness, a athlete-run business. We are all about athlete-run businesses. So if you are an athlete and you have a business that you want to get out on the network, shoot us a message, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. You know, we want to see everybody be able to build their brand as a player, because that only helps you continue to play football and make yourself a lot more viable in these sports, which is difficult. It's very difficult. So with that, without further ado, here is the reveal video of the team that was just announced, the EAU Claire Jammers, which, again, looks like a very awesome brand to kind of start off with. 1,000 moving into 2024. And I believe they've grown something like 5,000 people over the past 2 seasons or 2 years alone. So that's important information to know if you're going to put a team there, and especially if they're pacing the state on growth going forward. So I'm kind of curious, what are you guys' thoughts on the branding for the Jammers and then also their choice of city? Let's go to Cody first.
Yeah, for the branding, first off, it just kind of looks like Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec with the Jammers. I mean, that's just, I mean, ever since he grew out his beard and stuff like that. But I like the logo. I like the play on what it is. I mean, you've seen kind of the other logos throughout the league, whether it's the Duluth Harbor Monsters, Ozark Lunkers. Like they're kind of trying to get into the personality of the city, what those people are kind of like, to try and relate to them. So I do like the branding, the colors. You have like the guitar pick style shield in the background and, you know, jamming on the guitar. It helps out with Duluth as kind of a travel partner along that I-35 corridor. I know they're off I-35 in Eau Claire, but yeah, it boasts, and we'll talk about Hot Springs, I'm sure, probably after this, but it boasts kind of that, hey, we're going to travel pretty much one main highway on I-35 to Kansas City, Springfield, things along those lines. And I know that's, again, off the beaten path, but kind of just up and down that north-south corridor to kind of limit travel. I like it. I do think it's a good idea to kind of get these growing populations in these small little cities where you just kind of know, hey, probably not going to sell at the arena. We've got enough people here to watch this game. It's new, exciting, it's different. As CJ pointed out in the last segment, it's a different rule set. It's a different style of football. Go watch it, go support it, and we'll see if it grows.
Completely agree. I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever watched before, and you know, it's definitely out there. So they're definitely setting themselves apart when it comes to their style of play. CJ, what are your thoughts on the city they chose and the branding they chose?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're leaning into, like Cody said, the markets are all strategically placed where the travel is not ridiculous. Wisconsin is a huge football state. Outside of the University of Wisconsin, there's a million Division III schools there that play, and obviously you have the Packers, and you have the Green Bay Blizzard. But if you're not in a major city, what do you have? So like the city that was chose has a Division III school there that they're fairly successful, but when their season ends, if you want to go watch football, you have to travel somewhere to go watch it within the state. So I think it's very good strategy, good marketing. I will say, if their mascot doesn't show up to the first home game looking just like that guy in the picture, like if he doesn't have a giant beard, headband, and break a guitar in the middle of the field, it was all waste. But no, I think the Arena League is doing it right. They're slow growing, but they also understand that they are not competing with the AFL, IFL, NAL, any other league. They are their own thing. So their only competition is stability and how many people are going to continue to watch it. Like Cody said, they probably don't sell out all their arenas. That's fine. Do you have enough to make it work? Do the players find it beneficial to continue to play? Do fans continue to find it beneficial to watch? Sam, you and I were talking about before we went on, the first question that I get asked as a player is, well, is arena or indoor football real? Is it real football? It's 3 offensive linemen. It's not real football. Well, it is. It's just different rules. So now you're already taking something that people view as a niche or niche, however you say it. Forgive my Southern accent. Sport like arena indoor football, and breaking it down even smaller. So, I hope that they have the formula and everything to work out, and it continues to grow, because it is exciting. Every time I see the scores on these games, I'm like, that's a lot of work for that scoreboard operator. So hopefully they continue to grow and, continue to find success and new markets.
Speaking of new markets, there's one other market that's been announced, as we all know, and that is, of course, the Hot Springs Wise Guys, which I think is just so cool when it comes to the branding. And it's a situation where I honestly did not see this coming, but they had been dropping hints as well. Here's a picture from their reveal, and here's their logo. I love it. And I hope they come out with pinstripe jerseys just like that in 2025, because I think that would be amazing to see, kind of like a tuxedo themed jersey. You know, that could get a little creative for sure. Cody, what are your thoughts on the Hot Springs Wise Guys?
And it's the branding again too. It's like it kind of makes you think, like, what did Hot Springs have back in the day of the old timey gangsters and stuff like that? Like, you're a wise guy, eh? Did they have something to deal with like prohibition? Clearly their mascot is a horse. Did that have to do something with like thoroughbred racing? I'm not in tune to what Hot Springs brings to the table in terms of their past history of that city. So clearly, if you're trying to, yeah, there's the logo. If you're trying to, make a connection, was there something related to horse racing or some sort of prohibition thing with, some sort of like Al Capone gangster style thing? I'm not sure, but clearly there might be a connection here. If not, well, it's still a cool logo regardless. Like, it's really cool to see a horse holding a football by the hooves. It doesn't even need thumbs to throw the thing. Again, as we talked about with Eau Claire, it's another little micro population of, it's outside of Little Rock. It's on this north-south corridor between Springfield, Kansas City, Waterloo, and then you go up farther north to Duluth and Eau Claire. And it's just these like 6 or 7 or 8 states that right here in the Great Plains area. I don't know. Again, it's a great branding. I hope that the branding can draw fans in. I hope the level of play and the consistency that the 4 teams this season have been able to accomplish can bring in fans from Hot Springs or Eau Claire. It can really grow the league to something that is completely different than what we see in the IFL or the NAL or even the AFL.
Agreed. CJ, I'm interested to hear your take on this logo, branding, and their choice of city as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, forgive if you hear dogs in the background. The logo, probably the best logo that I've seen from an expansion team, or even potentially any. I mean, it's just it's clean. It's not doing too much. The colors really go well together. Be interested to see, like you said, they're going to rock some pinstripe uniforms this year or next year when they come out. I don't know a lot about the market, but once again, as long as they're growing and continuing to put people in the best situation to be successful, I think that it's a good move.
I agree. And there's so much stuff you can play off of with these 2 logos that came out, the Jammers and the Wise Guys. Whether it's, you're bringing in concerts with the Jammers, or, with the Wise Guys, you got mafia themed nights, or, you got a tuxedo night. You have everybody wear tuxedos into the arena, or there's so many different ways you can promote this and kind of grow the brand. I think it's a great move for them. And I like what you said, CJ, about the logo. It is very clean. It's not doing too much. It gets the point across that this is kind of a mafia style thing. But at the same time, it's very creative. It still kind of leans into the cartoonish feel of some of these team logos and team names, which I like a lot. In a world where every team name that is, the Broncos, every horse name known to man, for them to have a horse in their logo and not have a name that's already done and been done multiple times is honestly pretty surprising in its own right. So I think the TAL is doing a lot of things right. And one of the things they've done right is they are putting teams in markets that are growing quickly. So this is another market that has a solid population. In 2022, the census had them at 98,296 people. They're growing at an average rate of about 0.25% a year, and they're projected at actually being over 100,000 in this city this year. So at that point, I mean, you've got a pretty solid fan base. Obviously, you're not going to tap all of them, but you've got a pretty solid population there to work on in terms of getting them to games and hopefully packing out that arena. And like I said, if you're creative with the branding, you're creative with the theme nights and stuff like that, they'll come. The fans are going to come because it's going to be a good time. It's going to be very entertaining. And to shout out somebody that has been on the channel in the past, if more teams could take a note from the Omaha Beef and really have that in the inclusive experience, the constant entertainment throughout the game, I think this league will find success. And, I think that's something that every team should be able to take a page from. It's a nonstop event. It's a spectacle from the time that you get in that arena till the time the game's done. And even after the game, when you get to go meet the players, you get signatures and all that stuff. It's really something that I've admired about the Beef and several other teams. They're just the example that came to the top of my head. But, those teams that really bring the fans in are the ones that are going to be successful. And I'm very excited to see what the Wise guys are able to do down there in Hot Springs. So excited for the TAL. I think this is a great move for them. I think they've done a lot of smart business decisions when it comes to growing slowly. Sustainable growth is a big, hot, key term in all of these expansion teams that we need to kind of watch going forward. But any final thoughts on anything we've discussed today before I kind of let you guys get on with your weekend?
What's happening?
My son's piping out again here. Cody, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
The one thing to touch on the Arena League is when you look at some of these teams, it's kind of something I wanted to point out too. So you're talking about populations and stuff. Excuse me. When you look at the 6 teams, 4 of them are roughly in cities that are not major metropolitans. Like you've got the Kansas City Goats here, where I live here in Kansas City. That's a major metropolitan area. And then you've got the Ozark Lunkers down in Springfield, and I think Springfield's the 3rd largest city in Missouri. Other than that, these are all teams that are probably the main tenant, the only sport in those areas, whether it's Waterloo, Eau Claire, Duluth. It's something that will give those people entertainment, like you're talking about, give them that spectacle, considering all of the stuff that we have here in Kansas City, whether it's the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting. You got a lot of options here. I'm not saying it's not going to work with the Goats, but what I'm saying is like you have a lot of options here. When you talk about Hot Springs, it's Hot Springs. That's it. That's all you got. Talk about Duluth, they probably have like maybe some minor league baseball or something, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, it's not much else. And so they're putting teams strategically in these cities where they are probably the main sports tenant. So got to give kudos where that's due for the Arena League.
It's very important. The lack of competition is always a good thing in certain cases, and I think that's a great point to be made. And as far as the KC market, I mean, if you wanted a reason to go watch that team, they've put up over 90 points in 2 games this season. That is unbelievable. It's only a matter of time before they hit 100. And also on top of that, they've got a former Kansas City Chiefs player in ownership. So, I mean, if you want to root for a Kansas City built and made team, there it is.
Yeah, they've got the championship game. I believe it was either this weekend or it might be next weekend, and it's outdoors. So it's not actually indoors this time. It's actually outdoors. Can't remember the address. It's at a high school, but yeah, they're actually playing it outdoors, and I cannot remember for the life of me because one of their owners is one of the local AM radio channel people here, and he's been promoting it all week. So
that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that they've got that style of promotion going as well. I mean, local promotion is what's really important, and we've man, if you watched our UFL show this year, you know how important we understand that the local promotion is, because a lot of those markets suffered, during that merger. But CJ, any final thoughts for you today before we get out of here, buddy?
Yeah, just want to encourage people to keep watching, keep helping the game grow. Understand that good, bad, or indifferent, things are going to go the way they go, no matter what league it is, no matter what team it is. Things are going to happen, so just continue to support, continue to subscribe to podcasts like this, and, continue to comment on posts and things like that. But understand, like, at the end of the day, we're all still people, us as players and coaches and owner, like, still have families that we go home to, and just because you have the freedom to and the right to, which by all means exercise it, doesn't mean that we don't read stuff and get upset as well. So I know that's a little off brand maybe from everything else, but just giving you guys the players' perspective and understanding, like, we work hard for this. We love seeing the leagues grow and expansion and things like that, but we also suffer when teams fold and teams don't pay players, and housing goes under. We're the ones that end up suffering, not the people on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that comment. So just continue to support us, continue to help the leagues grow. I'd love to see a situation where every team is playing on ESPN and doing all that stuff, but it's going to take a long time to do that. And I think continued growth, like we've said 100 times, is better than no growth. And understanding that you don't have to play in a 15,000 seat arena. If you play in front of 5,000 like Omaha and you pack it out, it's better than playing in front of 20,000 and having 2,000 people there. So just that's really it. Just appreciate you having me on. Appreciate being able to share what little bit of insight I have on this. I'm not nearly as plugged in as you guys are, but definitely enjoyed this and would love coming back on and continue to give in the perspective that some people don't see inside the helmet. So
No, honestly, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us the player's perspective. And I know that was, maybe not what people expected you to say there, but I think we can all benefit from operating under the assumption that you should respect your fellow man first and foremost. Okay, if you have an opinion, sure, have an opinion. You are welcome to have that opinion. We are in a great country where freedom of speech is not only allowed, it's encouraged, right? So have that freedom of speech. Tell it like you think it is, but at the same time, realize that on the other side of that computer, the other side of that keyboard, there's another human being. Have some respect. Realize that this stuff affects their lives, and just keep that in the back of your mind. When you're saying all these harsh things about some of these leagues and stuff, and I'm guilty of it too. So I'm not trying to say that I'm perfect, but there are people being affected by everything we say and do, and negatively and positively. So some of these cities have really dedicated fan bases. Tulsa, Oklahoma, for instance, teams like that and fan bases like that, you can positively impact these people's lives as well. So if you want to criticize, go ahead and criticize. But at the same time, show up to the games, support these teams, show that you actually care. And then maybe your opinion there has a little bit more weight behind it. It's one of those things where these teams need our help. It's not an easy world to navigate. There isn't the millions and billions of dollars that the NFL has. There's not even necessarily the millions of dollars that the UFL has or the CFL has. And I know that's on a much smaller scale than the NFL, but it is a situation where a lot of teams, a lot of people pour their heart and soul into this game, and we, the fans, benefit from it. A lot of these teams don't even make profit. So when you think about that, why are these owners doing it? They do it because they love the game. Well, they're not going to love the game if all they ever get out of it is negativity and people constantly talking down about their product, their team, and what they're able to accomplish with the money they do drop in. I mean, a lot of these owners are literally hemorrhaging hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to make this work. So, keep that in the back of your mind. A lot of people are doing a lot to make this work for everybody involved. So anything else before we get out of here? All right, before we get out of here, make sure you go subscribe to In the Alley on YouTube, Cody's IFL dedicated YouTube channel. Great content coming out weekly from start to finish of the IFL season. If you want to learn more about the league, he's definitely the go-to guy. Also check out ZO Productions. That's Arena Football Statement. For anybody who doesn't know, Ducon was not able to be here today. He's a little bit busy covering the NAL, but that's okay. We really appreciate him bringing his time to us every weekend when he can be here. Also really appreciate CJ being here. I know he's not necessarily a content creator, but he brings us a unique insight into what the players deal with. Thank you to TJ who joined us earlier as well. And thank you to everybody who watched. So if you watched this, hit that like button, comment, share this with your friends. It really means the world to us. It helps us grow and it helps us continue producing great content, hopefully. for you guys in the future. On that note, we will definitely catch you guys in the next one, and we'll leave you with this little